Oh, oops.
She poured coffee for strangers, wiped down tables while her heart ached for something more. And yet at that moment, a trio of young women, laughing behind crystal flutes, made her pain feel like a spotlight. You could hear their mockery in the way they whispered, in the way their laughter seemed to echo through the diner, and she felt every word sink into her bones. And then, just when it seemed she would crumble under the weight of their scorn, someone powerful stepped in. But how could a wealthy woman, a CEO with fortunes most could only dream of, decide to use her power not to destroy but to save? And why did she choose this moment, this girl? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The victim was a struggling waitress, a young woman whose life was defined by long hours, aching feet, and a quiet strength that few ever noticed. The perpetrators were three wealthy young women who thought their money made them untouchable, who treated public places like their own stage and the people around them like props in their show. And then there was the unlikely hero, a CEO with a hidden past, a woman whose presence alone could change the direction of an entire room, and yet no one could have predicted why she was there watching. What drove the rich girls to mock someone who had never wronged them, to tear at her dignity as though cruelty was a game? Why did a CEO take interest in someone so ordinary? And what secret could tie this single night of humiliation to the shocking downfall of an entire empire? The waitress lived a life many would call invisible. Each morning began before sunrise, and each night ended long after most had gone to bed. She worked double shifts, balancing trays heavy with plates, forcing a smile that often hid the exhaustion etched across her face. She sent what little she could home to a sick mother who relied on her, and though the world around her seemed to pass by in bright colors of wealth and success, her days remained shades of sacrifice. Yet even in hardship, there was a quiet dignity about her, a resilience that kept her moving forward when others might have surrendered. On the other side of the city, the rich girls lived in an entirely different universe. They were the spoiled daughters of elite families, accustomed to red carpets, parties that spilled into early mornings, and luxury cars waiting at their command. Their laughter was often cruel, sharpened against anyone they deemed beneath them, and small acts of mockery, whether dismissing a driver or humiliating a server, had become part of their character. They flaunted their wealth as if it were armor, never questioning the damage they left behind. And then, there was the CEO. To most, she was a mystery. Stories circulated about how she had built her empire from nothing, whispers of a past no one could quite confirm. She moved in powerful circles, yet carried herself with a quiet restraint, as though she understood something about life the others never would. There were rumors that she had once stood in a place very different from the corner office she now commanded, but the truth of her beginnings remained hidden. What few could see was that her path was not as far removed from the waitress as it seemed. Their lives, though separated by fortune and circumstance, were about to converge. And on one night, their worlds collided, and nothing would ever be the same. It was a Friday evening, the kind that drew in the city's wealthiest into polished dining rooms where the chandeliers glowed like captured stars. The waitress, dressed in the same faded uniform she had worn for years, moved quietly between tables, her hands steady even though her body was weary. And then the rich girls arrived. Their laughter entered the room before they did, sharp, commanding, a reminder to everyone present of just how little they respected the space around them. They were dressed in luxury labels that shimmered under the lights, and from the moment they sat down, they treated the waitress as though she were part of the furniture, something to be used, dismissed, and mocked. One sneered at her shoes, another scoffed at the wear in her blouse, and the third, smiling into her phone's camera, whispered loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "Can you believe people actually live like this?" The humiliation deepened when they deliberately spilled a drink across the table, demanding she clean it quickly while they filmed her kneeling, her hands trembling as she dabbed at the stain. Each laugh they let out felt like a stone hurled in her direction. Each cruel word etched itself into her silence. And then came the final act of cruelty. One of the girls pulled cash from her designer purse, let the bills flutter down to the floor, and with a smirk said, "Pick it up. It's probably more than you make in a week." Around them, guests shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Some looked away, others stared at their plates, unwilling to confront the display unfolding before them. Not a single voice rose in her defense. The waitress, her dignity shattered, excused herself from the table, slipped into the staff corridor, and collapsed in tears, the weight of the moment pressing against every hardship she had carried in silence for years. But what she did not know was that she was not alone. Among the crowd sat the CEO, silent and watchful, her eyes fixed not on the rich girls, but on the waitress, who reminded her of something long buried within herself. She saw in that moment not just cruelty, but an opportunity. What happened next would spark a chain of events that no one saw coming. By the next morning, the humiliation that had once been confined to a single restaurant was everywhere. A video of the incident, filmed by one of the rich girls themselves, spread like wildfire across social media. Millions of people watched the waitress kneeling on the floor, her face pale with embarrassment, while the rich girls laughed and mocked her. The public reaction was immediate. Outrage poured in from every corner. Some condemned the rich girls for their cruelty, demanding accountability, while a smaller but vocal group dismissed it all as a harmless joke, insisting people were too sensitive. The debate raged, drawing the attention of newspapers, talk shows, and even television pundits. Headlines screamed across screens, "Waitress humiliated by heiresses, cruelty caught on camera, is this what wealth does to people?" While the public argued, the CEO acted. Quietly, without announcement, she began to move pieces in a game only she understood. Within weeks, her financial team acquired controlling shares in the companies that kept the rich girls' families afloat. At the same time, private investigators combed through documents, contracts, and accounts that no one had dared to scrutinize before. Beneath the glossy exterior of luxury brands and family reputations, corruption began to surface. Deals made in secret, money shifted illegally, and assets hidden from tax authorities were dragged into the light. What followed was a storm of legal battles. Lawyers filed motion after motion, their offices flooded with paperwork as the rich families tried to push back. Bribes were offered, influence was used to bend rules, and still the pressure only mounted. News anchors reported the downfall in real time. Lawsuits, frozen accounts, luxury estates seized by the authorities. It was as though the very ground beneath the rich girls and their families had given way, leaving them scrambling to hold on to their status. And through it all, the CEO remained silent, her hand guiding every move, her presence unseen. For many, it seemed as though she was simply defending a stranger, stepping in where the world had failed. But the truth was far deeper, far more personal. The CEO wasn't just defending a waitress. She was avenging something that had scarred her long before. For weeks, speculation swirled. Why would a CEO, a woman of immense wealth and influence, involve herself so deeply in the humiliation of a waitress she did not even know? Some assumed it was a publicity stunt. Others believed it was an attempt to crush rival families for business advantage. But the truth, when it came to light, was far more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The CEO had once stood in that same place. She had once tied an apron around her waist, poured coffee into chipped mugs, and endured the laughter of those who thought money gave them the right to wound. In that same town, years before, she had been humiliated in front of strangers, her dignity stripped away by the carelessness of those born into privilege. She had walked away from that night with a vow written silently across her heart. If she ever gained the power to protect those who were powerless, she would never stand by in silence again. And when she saw the waitress humiliated by the rich girls, she was not just witnessing cruelty, she was looking at her own reflection from a different time. The tears, the humiliation, the crushing silence of onlookers who did nothing. All of it was a mirror of the life she had once fought to leave behind. This was never about rescuing someone else. It was about redemption. It was about fulfilling a promise made to a younger version of herself. A girl who deserved to be defended but never was. She wasn't saving a stranger. She was saving the girl she once was. Within months, the world the rich girls once ruled with arrogance collapsed around them. The families who had carried themselves with the assurance of untouchable privilege now faced headlines they could not control. Their businesses, once gleaming symbols of wealth, were dragged into courtrooms and audited until the foundations cracked. Shareholders pulled away, partnerships dissolved, and creditors circled like vultures over what remained. Their sprawling estates, filled with the trophies of excess, were seized by the authorities and emptied in auctions where strangers walked away with what once seemed priceless. Reputations that had taken generations to build were ruined in a matter of weeks, and the laughter that once echoed in crowded restaurants was silenced by disgrace. And while the world watched their fall, the waitress's life was changing in quiet, deliberate steps. The CEO, true to her vow, did not leave her in the shadow of humiliation. Instead, she offered her a scholarship, the kind of opportunity that could lift her from survival into a future of possibility. Later, she brought her into her own company, giving her a place not just to work but to grow, to stand where she could no longer be mocked, no longer dismissed as less. The story that began with cruelty ended in transformation, but the reflection it left behind carried weight heavier than any fortune. In a world where power is often abused, where wealth so easily becomes a weapon, sometimes it takes one person's scars to change another's fate. Yet the question lingered, unsettled and sharp. Was this truly justice? Or was it revenge wrapped in the disguise of redemption? If you were the CEO, standing in that room and watching the waitress mocked and humiliated by the rich girls, would you have done the same? Would you have used every ounce of power at your disposal to bring down those who believed themselves untouchable? Or would you have walked away and let the moment pass into silence? Was this justice served? Or did she go too far in turning humiliation into the destruction of entire families? The line between protection and vengeance is thin, and tonight we leave it for you to decide. And if you thought this was shocking, wait until you hear the story of the millionaire who kicked out his wife in labor, only to discover that she was worth more than his entire empire. Subscribe for more stories that reveal how power, greed, and justice collide in ways no one ever expects. Thanks for watching.